So, you've got a net worth higher than some sovereign nations and you're sick of sharing this planet with the rest of us brokies? Well, there's only one logical thing left to do: buy a private island. Congratulations, you're about to follow in the footsteps of other upstanding gentlemen like Pablo Escobar and Jeffrey Epstein. But before you jump on your jet and disappear off to paradise, you're going to want to have a quick look at these numbers. Because being the king of your own little land isn't exactly all it's cracked up to be. Just ask billionaire David Murdoch. Between 2006 and 2010, he was forking out between $20 and $30 million every year just to keep the lights on before selling his Hawaiian paradise. By the end of this, you'll know exactly where to buy your little slice of heaven, what eye-watering costs will keep you awake at night, and whether there's any version of this where you actually walk away from this in the green. Having the ability to buy a private island is a rare opportunity. There's no official register or exact count for this niche market, but it's estimated just 10 to 50 islands are sold per year, with usually somewhere between 150 and 700 properties publicly listed for sale globally at any given time, the cost of which swings wildly. At the very bottom, for somewhere around the $50,000 mark, you can get yourself a remote rock. This will have no dock, no power, no water, and no way to land anything bigger than a kayak. This 0.08 acre island in Bocas, Panama, went up for sale for $49,000 in 2015. And sure, that's cheaper than a mid-range pickup, but it's also about half as practical for inhabiting. Move up to the $2 to $15 million bracket, and you start entering the territory you're actually here for. Nanakulavu Island in Fiji listed at $3.25 million in 2023, which buys you a simple villa and a wooden dock. But when you dig a little deeper into your pockets, like 15 to 75 million, things start to get interesting. Pumpkin Key off Florida was listed at $75 million in 2025, complete with a deep water concrete dock, staff housing, multiple villas, and of course, a helipad. But more importantly, at this price, you start to get real infrastructure, like a commercial reverse osmosis plant, the machine that turns seawater into something you can drink, plus a solar battery array. You're really not paying for the beach anymore, you're securing the equipment you need to start surviving an apocalypse. And then, north of 100 million, you reach the ultra-elite tier in the world of private islands. This 110-acre property off the coast of Phuket, Thailand, was listed at $160 million in 2023. It's largely underdeveloped, but still complete with fresh water, electric generator, and mobile signal. But if building from the ground up is a little too much work for your taste, then perhaps Little Pipe Cay in the Bahamas is more up your street. For $100 million, not only will you get bragging rights to the most expensive island publicly listed in the country, but also 5 residences, a spa, a super yacht dock, and an Olympic-length infinity pool. Whatever tier you land on, you're going to want to make changes, and being owner of the island doesn't exempt you from the paperwork. A basic environmental site assessment is somewhere around $5,000, which at this point is more like a rounding error. But if you've got plans to turn the place into a commercial playground for the ultra-elite, you need a full marine environmental impact statement, which is a little more difficult. That'll entail 12 to 18 months of research vessels circling your future paradise, a 6-month government review on the back of it, and a bill of $8 to $20 million before you've poured a single foundation. But that doesn't matter because you've just completed a serious side quest and bought your very own island. Yet, as you're about to quickly discover, buying the land and doing your pre-move renovations is literally the start of the never-ending money pit this place is about to become. Welcome to the scary world of running costs. I know you have expensive taste, so I'll just go ahead and assume you bought something in the $50 million or above mark, most likely in the Caribbean or off the coast of Florida. First up, there's the staff cost. Depending on the size of your new place, you're probably running a full-time team of 5 to 10 employees. Your team will include a general manager, a private chef or two, a housekeeper and butler, plus a maintenance guy and a gardener. Oh, and don't forget the private security. You've got to keep those brokies away somehow. Staffing costs will vary drastically depending on the size and location of your island, but a good general manager alone will set you back somewhere around $250,000. So chances are, with an island of your size, you're probably somewhere in the ballpark of $1 million a year in wages to keep things running smoothly. Speaking of running smoothly, there's going to be a lot of maintenance needed around here very soon. All that beautiful blue water and tropical weather will wreak havoc on your buildings, so let's put aside $50,000 a month just to make sure that this place doesn't fall apart faster than you can enjoy it. Next up, we need to think about getting some electricity going. You've probably already installed an independent solar array and transformer system, but you'll also want a backup diesel generator for the days where the sun doesn't quite cut it. You'll probably want a 200 kilowatt generator to ensure all your buildings have enough power, which will set you back a measly $20,000 to $50,000. Say your solar panel gives you enough juice to fulfill 14 hours of average daily use, you'll only need to run the generator for 10 hours of the day. Under a steady 75% load at that size, you'll consume about 5 gallons per hour. Remote fuel charges put the cost of diesel at about $5 per gallon, so you'll maybe spend about $250 a day running the generator. Over the year, that's about 90 grand and change to keep the lights on. Then you've got to think about the logistics involved in buying and getting literally anything to your island. Food, parts, waste removal, and docking fees. I assume you already have a boat or two handy, but the costs of keeping them maintained and docked also add up. If you're being frugal, then you might be able to get away with including just a few $100,000 in logistic expenses. Last but not least, we need to get this whole thing insured because you've just built a multi-million-dollar asset in the middle of Hurricane Alley. Specialized insurance usually runs on a percentage value of your property to offer you protection against natural disasters like hurricanes and earthquakes, as well as liability coverage for staff and guests. This usually sits at around 1 to 2% of your total property value, although it can vary depending on your risk level with higher premiums depending on what you build and if you decide to run it as a commercial property. Let's say you've kept renovations extremely minimal to just $5 million, increasing the value of your new island to $55 million. If you've managed to get your hands on a good insurance deal at 1%, that puts your annual premium at $550,000. So before you've welcomed a single guest, or so much as dipped a toe in that new pool, you're going to need just under $2.5 million set aside to cover your annual running and upkeep costs. Now, since you just dropped $50 million on a holiday island the way the rest of us pick up lunch, then chances are you're not too concerned that this island is a tropical money pit. But if you want to make some money out of this asset you've just bought, then turning it into a rentable holiday resort could be a profitable venture. After all, you've probably heard the story of your fellow island owner, Richard Branson. In 1978, he flew out to the British Virgin Islands, climbed a hill on the 74-acre Necker Island, and offered the owner the king of all lowballs, 100 grand on their $6 million property. A year later, he eventually bought it for 180 grand, and over the next 3 years, he spent $10 million building an exclusive resort. Today, it's worth around $100 million, and renting the entire island runs north of $140,000 a night. And 100 grand a night sounds like a nice little money machine, until you remember that has to cover the cost of 150 staff running 10 estates across the property, along with the catering, spa, water sports, and literally whatever else the guests can cook up. As the island is just listed as another of the assets on the Virgin Group's annual accounts, there are no published figures for its profitability, although industry analysis estimates that it nets somewhere in the region of 4 to 8 million in annual profit. But don't be thinking it's going to be easy to turn your island paradise into a money-making asset, because there's literally a graveyard of former fortunes that have been lost developing island getaways, the most famous of which was Colin Tennant and Moustique Island. In 1958, the British aristocrat bought the entire island of Moustique for £45,000. Back then, it was just 1,300 acres of tropical paradise with no roads and no running water. Over the next 2 decades, he poured much of his £100 million fortune into turning it into a private playground for the rich and famous. And his plan worked. Moustique became a household name and hosted everyone from rock stars like Mick Jagger and David Bowie to English royalty like Princess Margaret. But the venture bankrupted him, and he eventually sold his business and island to a Venezuelan chemicals magnate. He died in exile on St. Lucia, having lost both his fortune and the island. Then you have people like fruit billionaire David Murdoch, who owned the Hawaiian island of Lanai for nearly 3 decades. This 141 square mile island is the pinnacle of island ownership, home to 2 major luxury resort hotels, a multitude of private residences, and a world-class golf course. But between 2006 and 2010, Murdoch bled between $20 and $30 million a year, keeping its basic systems and resorts alive, calling it the worst financial decision of his life. He eventually sold the island to former Oracle CEO Larry Ellison for $300 million, a transaction that represents the most expensive private real estate purchase in history. Ellison has been running it at a loss ever since, pouring tens of millions into water systems and microgrids, treating an entire island as a personal science project. And this is the reality of owning your own island. Most people who own their own private islands are like Ellison. They're individuals with personal fortunes that are large enough that they barely notice when the annual maintenance bills arrive. So enjoy that new island, you deserve it. Just remember, you didn't just buy paradise, you bought a bill that never stops arriving.